all across space. All across time. Mysteries that we can't understand.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Looking into the stories and those behind them. Welcome to UAP Insight Podcast.
Jason, just want to say welcome back. We're dealing with a few technical difficulties, but yeah, I'd love to get your perspective on some of the newest happenings in the UFO world, UFO space. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. First off, how are you doing?
I've been doing pretty well. Just enjoying my being closer to family and so forth. So it's been a good thing overall. Getting a little bit busy this month, next month in interviews again, um, things like that. So life's been good. Had to kind of deal with some family crises as well, but everything seems to be turning out okay, and so I'm happy about all that.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. I know last time we spoke, you were just trying to deal with the fallout from the program and all of the drama that came along with that, trying to get your clearance back and all that stuff. Have you made any progress on any of that?
No, it looks like I'm getting more and more closer to just probably recertifying on some things and maybe getting a different career path. Because actually, it's been such a long time. I've actually been kind of enjoying the fact that uh, they can't hold my clearance over my head anymore. So there's a little bit of a blessing there, but yeah, I'd like to get my clearance back so I can just jump right back into what I was doing. Because I'm more comfortable doing that. I've been doing it a lot more years than anything else right now. But you never know what kind of twists life puts in your path. So we'll see how things work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're keeping your head held high and, saying screw you to all the haters, essentially.
Well, you got to do that because that's what they're doing to you. They're screwing you all the time. So I don't mind getting a little nasty back at them. So they kind of deserve it. They weren't there anyway. So what do I care?
Yeah, exactly. So, I know James Fox is currently working on a director's cut of Moment of Contact, where that was kind of the Varginha Brazil creature, which I have up on the wall behind me.
Yep.
Um, have you been in talks with him about maybe coming back for like a director's cut of the program at this
No.
point?
No. He's always wanted to go back to Varginha. Uh, like I've said before, he's probably the leading world's expert on that particular event. So I'm very proud of him doing that because I know he's got, he's always felt like he just wants to get to the bottom of that case and get all the video he can and all the information. So he's hard at work trying to do all those kinds of things. So very busy right now. I haven't had a lot of time to talk to him, mainly because he's been on the road doing all these things to get the director's cut out and re-interviewing people and so on and so forth.
Okay, yeah. So, um, I don't know if you've heard, um, I know you're pretty busy, but recently, I believe it was just a couple of weeks ago now, John Kozlowski, the new director of Arrow, went on Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and during that appearance, he said that by the end of fiscal year 25, they're hoping to have a public reporting mechanism through Arrow.
To be opening up to the public soon and have a public reporting mechanism. As that
How soon?
hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, so before October.
The government fiscal year. So
Yes,
in
bef-
2025.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Whether it's good, bad, middling?
It's good, but again, there's a lot of things that we think are good for the government to head, and then it's just not what you think it'll be at the end. Some of the things I'm hoping he includes in that is going to be a declassification of imagery type process. And that comes from not just him, but also what Representative Luna has been saying. I know they've been reviewing a lot of evidence and imagery, videos, what have you. But somebody has to ask the tough question, why are these images now, since you have determined that they are unknown and you don't know what they are, why do they remain classified? That's going to be a big issue for them to tackle, because if all the people and analysts in the intel community can't figure it out, which also includes academia, scientists and engineers, and there's still no conclusive result, they're going to have to come up with a process. What do we do with these things? We just keep shelving them and let them gathering dust? Or do we want to start declassifying this, sanitizing it? Because sanitization is a possibility, because sometimes when you get military video, there are some platforms that are still classified, and if you look at the video, our enemies can kind of determine some of our capability. So you have to be careful with that, but there's a way around that. When you sanitize, that's what I'm talking about, is removing all of the things that might tip off our enemies, and then we can get it out to the public. So, but we've been doing that for years already. It should be an easy fix if they do it right. So that, and they also need to really think about public trust and transparency, and what does that mean to them? There are a lot of people getting information in government right now about all these things, but it still seems to be a very tight-lipped group. We're getting more and more people, onesie-twosie people or not read in, but reviewing the information, and yet we're not seeing a lot of transparency. So they really need to tackle that if they want to gather. And those two things are tied. I think transparency is a way to gain the public's trust. And if they could tackle those two things, I think a lot of the negativity will lessen. It won't go away, of course. You've always got people that are just going to be nasty and never satisfied. But at least some of the people that are wanting the information are no longer going to be frustrated by the lack of transparency. So there's going to have to be some more transparency, I think. They're getting better at it. I'm glad to see that they are making strides in that direction, but they still have some more to do when it comes to working on that. So that's
absolutely.
that's my feeling, is that yes, it's good, but just like with anything else that's good, it could be used and come to nothing. And I hope that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement, and that's part of why I'm supportive of that, but also supportive of stuff like the UAP Disclosure Act, which is up for a third year in a row, makes well over 20 mentions of the term non-human intelligence within its pages. I think the most controversial thing about it is just the eminent domain clause, which I know a lot of people have differing opinions on that. So what would you say? Like, imagine you're like a contractor that has access to this, and the government is claiming eminent domain on it. What would be your reaction?
Well, there are people that have had their stuff literally confiscated by all sorts of government interagencies, CIA, FBI, what have you. Um, so we don't want to see more of that. There are people, though, that need to come forward with the information, and I think that's more the path. It's not so much we're going to, come by your house and just steal your stuff. What we're looking for is like eminent domain on, the probably private industry partners that have worked on these exotic materials and technologies to come forward, and that if they're going to be stupid about it or resistant, that's what we need to focus the language on. It's not just a free-for-all that everybody goes in there with eminent domain on their mind that they can walk into your house and take whatever evidence you might have. That's inappropriate. I think that's a step in the opposite direction from where we want to be. So that being said, there also is if you do have something that is exotic in your possession, you also need to have a degree of security about yourself so that we can help you bring that forward in a safe manner so that you're not exposing it to bad actors and or perhaps a Russian spy that has heard about it and pretends to be like a government employee or an FBI agent, and they end up taking it back to Russia. Things like that can happen, and we need to make sure that we're thinking it through. The other part of it beckons back to the NHI mentions in there. We have to understand we don't have disclosure yet, and to make sweeping statements about the non-human intelligences, it's kind of out of our scope of control right now. It's one thing to say negotiate with somebody we already know, like our allies and so on and so forth, but apparently with the NHI, we have not really, we don't know what the government types are for them. I mean, they obviously have to come from a civilization that has their own form of governance and so on and so forth. And what strides have been taken? Well, there's been inklings that there have been agreements made without any public knowledge, without any voting or elected officials' involvement, very closed group that may only be able to be handled at the presidential level, which Trump has done to a certain degree. But all of these things are kind of new to the whole community. This is an unprecedented territory when it comes to this exotic tech and the mentioning of NHI. And I really want to see a little bit more work done on those issues, because if you take the language the way it is, it's more of a, hey, we're going to take stuff, and we're going to, try to take this over. But we also know who's handling the exotic materials, and hopefully the language is going to be general enough and also specific enough to handle that situation, because there's a lot of legalities. It goes across state lines and even into allied and territory in Europe, in Australia, all around the world. We have extensions of this program. So it's a very complex situation, let me put it that way, from a national standpoint. So all of those things, I haven't read the UDA, but those are the kind of things I want to see in it. I want to see a well thought out process in all of those regards, and the authorities to investigate it properly, because that's the thing that's really been lacking, is that up until now, we've not really had an authority given to, one interagency or another that can really cross all of those boundaries and work with the people that are on a local level as well as the national and international levels. That's a lot of different authorities. You don't want to have one person doing all that stuff, just like we don't with cyberspace, because you've got to have a little separation between what they can do. Otherwise, you have a person in a position of power that is really usually ends up in corruption. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to, be a guiding voice in any one of the negotiations in regards to something like a UAP Disclosure Act, what would
Not
be
this time around.
well, if you were,
Okay.
what would be the number one thing that you would push to be included with that?
An investigation by our government. I think that's the best first step is to have the authority to investigate properly and to have the right interagencies be able to operate uh, in whatever environment they find themselves in. That what I mean by that is going out to the different sites to look at the exotic material or find it and discover it, um, and a gradual process to do that where you have to announce that you're coming, and then it's up to that base commander or installation commander to comply or not comply. And then we need processes for both those situations because the authority needs to be able to, in some cases, use lethal force if needed, because that's what these base commanders have been given, is lethal force to stop anybody from entering the base. Um, so we need, if we're going to investigate this and they're being resistant and there's no good reason for it, then there needs to be a process for all of that. I mean, it's one thing to announce it. It's another for the installation commander to comply or not comply and give a statement as to why they would do one or the other, the conditions that they are expecting. And then the next thing would be to actually go to the place. And if there's resistance, what do you do? That's kind of what we need to do. And on top of that, if there's no resistance, we've got to make sure they're not hiding stuff in other places because, everybody's been talking about tunnels here and there that are, I know would probably be very hard to find if you didn't know the installation. So they're going to need even, probably some of the whistleblowers to come and make sure that they were looking in the right places even and get to the bottom of it all. And I think that's the very first step because then we could prove for a fact that NHI do exist and that they have been here on our planet. Then we can tackle the rest of it. Okay, how do we handle this situation? Is it appropriate for our military and our president alone to make these sorts of mankind level decisions about the presence here or not? And is that appropriate? Is that what the NHI want? Are they comfortable with that? All those questions can be started to be answered at that point and thought through.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your perspective on that. I wanted to ask you, would you, if there was legislation put forth that was essentially like a truth and reconciliation uh, bill for this topic, would you support that? Where, no matter what, save for egregious crimes such as, murder, you know, have these people who've been hiding this for decades or centuries even possibly have them come forward, say, lay it all out on the table. This is what we have. I'm sorry that we hit it, but let's move forward. Would you support something like that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, honestly, that's the way we should handle it, I think. But there are caveats to all of those things as well. I can't get into all of them right now, but yeah, I kind of agree with that being a path forward. Um, were you thinking about something in particular with that question? Maybe that'd be
No,
easier. 'Cause there's a lot of detail in that.
it's more of just kind of the most condensed version of a broad thought that I had. Because I know that people like Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp have been speaking publicly saying that we need something like a truth and reconciliation process, like what South Africa did post apartheid, except directed more towards like the UAP sphere. Um,
Yeah. Well, I think so. There's a couple. Well, since now I get the level you want to talk at, but I would say yes. That's a good example because it also brings to light some of the international parts of this. Um, Truth and reconciliation, I think, is applicable to wherever these craft crash or are retrieved. Um, we don't want our enemies to be the first to the punch, is one of the big pushes, I think. If the United States loses uh, the essence of being the one with the most resources to throw at this problem, or not problem, but this situation, um, if we want to remain that way, we're going to have to be non-adversarial with a lot of people around the world, and even within our own government. We're going to have to stop this stovepiping, this isolation, this us and them attitude, kind of a thing where it automatically sets up a lot of adversarialism. This is a global problem, or a global not problem. Can't kind of get away from calling it a problem. It's not really a problem. A situation that we've allowed into our lives. That's what it mainly is. It's not really a problem. And what I mean by that is just that the NHI have been here a long time. We're obviously still alive. They haven't, decimated us. They're pretty much leaving us alone. They don't get actively involved, as far as I know, unless it's behind closed doors with our government or our president or something like that. And it seems to be fairly innocuous. It's not affecting us every day, other than to see these things flying around in our airspace. But the meaning behind all of this contact between mankind and them, that is something that I don't believe any one man, including our president, should be allowed to keep under their hat. So there's a lot of, when you come up with this, reconciliation kind of a mentality, yes, I think that the truth is part of that, a big part of that. And that comes along, again, with what we talked about earlier with the transparency issue and the public trust issue. All of these things would go away if we just would have, our government and everybody in the program would have just come out and say, look, yes, we are in contact with them. And yes, we're sorry, but we made some agreements with them without telling you. But we want to make good on what it is. And hopefully they can couch it in such a way that it's not a big threat and that it's not doom and gloom, because I'm pretty sure the NHI don't want a big war on their hands as well as we don't about all of this. We need to find a path forward that's peaceful and inclusive. So truth and reconciliation is a good way to do that. It's all, to me, reconciliation is what you do when you do something wrong and you want to make it right. And that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. You couldn't have worded that better, I think. So I know you just mentioned that, NHI have been here for a very long time. So that kind of brings me to the next thing, those mummies from Nazca, Peru.
Yep.
Those are gaining more and more traction, especially recently. We had Jesse Michaels with American Alchemy, or Alchemy American. I always get it backwards.
Yep.
Going down and, getting to see all of these like CT scans and see the actual mummies. What are kind of your thoughts as someone who has been in contact with a program, a covert program of those mummies? Do they match up with anything that you may have heard of or stuff like that? Because I know David Grush mentioned to Representative Burleson, prior to Burleson going down to Peru or to Mexico for like one of these hearings, mentioned that there was, things there that matched up with his briefings.
That's correct. And I would say tridactyly is one of the biggest things about some of the morphologies on some of the species that people have been contacting. Probably both in the program and outside the program in the public spaces where people are encountering these beings. Tridactyly is not something you can just do. It's like biologically, I think I'm not qualified to speak to it, but I know that that's a morphology that you don't just get a mutation all of a sudden. You know, the mummies definitely are gaining traction, as you say, and I knew they would because a few months back I had talked to Joshua, who was working with the people down in Peru, and he's actually the one that's probably been trying to get the word out that, hey, the ministry down there doesn't want to release the mummies to the United States for analysis. If you want to see them, you've got to go to the university, is what he was saying. And I'm glad that our government finally got off their butt and went to go see the mummies rather than demanding that the mummies be turned over to the American government, which is a bunch of BS in my mind. That's just a nice, convenient way of saying, yeah, we might not give them back in their mind. Because quite frankly, the U.S. government has a track record of doing that. Oh, give us your stuff, we'll analyze it for you, and then they never give it back. So there was a lot of reasons why Peru reacted that way. So I'm glad we're actually getting some people down there. But yes, I think the other thing now is that one of them was pregnant when it died. And they found the fetus, and that is highly, highly suspect. Not suspect, or it's just a huge problem for debunkers, because usually you got body parts being pieced together and all these fakes, pieces of one animal or another, but having a fetus inside with a fully, when you scan the whole body, you can't find, any stitches, you can't find any glue, everything looks anatomically correct, and even the baby has tridactyly. These are things that I was hoping that they would go down there and discover, and they are. So I think we're going to see a lot more when it comes to these mummies, or at least some of the mummies. Some of the other ones might be debunked. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell, but at least the one that's pregnant, and I think one of the other mummies also shows a lot of really good promise on, hey, are these just, I think some people are saying that this is just an offshoot of the human race that ended up getting these morphologies, but that's going to be awfully hard for them to explain. It's going to be much harder to explain than just to say that these are not human. I think that's what the conclusion is going to be. But I'm sure that people are in the scientific community are going to do like they normally do and argue back and forth for quite a while.
Yeah, which I think argument for the sake of scientific progress is useful, as long as it's being constructive, coming towards an actual, consensus end goal. So what do you think is next for the story about the mummies? If you had to take a guess.
I would say we need to continue to support the effort to study them and to hear both sides of the scientific community's arguments for and against, and just post the results to the public and let them decide for themselves. It would be great if the government also gave their opinion about it. I think that it does do good for them to do so, that they give their opinion and not just the toe the line response, which I think Arrow kind of has set a lot of precedents on towing the line. I think several people have told me that the Arrow director is told pretty much what he can and cannot say. And that's what I call towing the line. So I'm hoping that they get away from that. It's one thing to give the analyst sort of response from the community, but it's quite another to actually tell you, well, what do you think about it? What's your gut feel? And I'd like to hear what Burleson and the rest of them have to say about that. And Luna, I'm glad that Representative Luna has also been doing some of that on the Joe Rogan show, and giving their actual gut feel instead of this canned, well, I can't talk about this, and at least they're saying, yeah, I really think that this stuff is real. And that's a good thing to hear. It shows that they have looked at evidence, that they've come to their own conclusions. And that does speak well of their honesty as well, as that, yeah, I'm willing to say this, and in one way or another, they're willing to take either the heat and or the agreement with the public domain. And I think that's the kind of, again, we're getting back into the personal relationship these folks have with the public. And you just can't get away with from that. I think the more we get that transparency and the public involved, the better the whole effort is going to be, because they're going to get support for it from us. And it's just going to break down some walls, especially with the mummies. And I think Peru will be more willing to allow the mummies to be inspected, and more open-minded to some of these analyses. They've been pretty helpful already, to tell you the truth. So I think it's just one of those things where we just have to keep pursuing it and working with the Peruvian government and getting down to that university and seeing for yourself if that's what it takes. Because it seems like the evidence was already there before Burleson went down there, but everybody wants to go down there and see for themselves. And I think that's the same for just about everybody who's seen a UFO or not seen a UFO. Is that's the one moment in time, is when you see it for yourself. That's when it really decides for you in the rest of your life, is this real or not? And I think that everybody needs a chance to do that. So maybe down the road, it'll be like maybe they'll put the mummies on display and have them in a museum, and you can go down there and read all about how this analysis has taken place. I know I'd love to go to a museum like that and just go see the mummies, and I would put that on my bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely do the same. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is these public hearings that are supposed to be happening next month up on Capitol Hill. Have you been approached at all about testifying during a public hearing?
No. I have not been approached. They know who I am. I'm available. I think the people that want to be in that space are the ones that should be there. But at the same time, some of the folks involved do have big egos, and they like the limelight. I'm not like that at all. I'm here. I've been giving my input. They know who I am. They sometimes watch my interviews, just like everybody else does, and they know what I have to say about things. If they want my opinion on things, I'd be willing to talk to them. I'm always here. I've always been here to help. But honestly, I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. And that's a part of it that they probably have not been asking me to come forward, because they know I don't play politics. I don't play with words. I've lived enough of my life, and I've been in the program and seen all of this stuff, and I know the dangers and risks involved. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And that kind of scares some of them, because they know that I don't mess around, and I'm not going to play your games. And I think that's a part of it that also scares them. So maybe that's why they don't want me there right now. I'm a little bit too uncontrollable. In other words, I'm one of those people that they can't just, sit down, Jay. Let me tell you what to say. This is what we're going to talk about today. No, I don't put up with that BS. That's a total line. That's an agenda. That's BS to me. You sit your butt down and let me tell you what is really going on, because you're messing things up if you don't have willingness to listen to folks like myself. But I'm a little frustrated with it, but at the same time, I don't really care. I've had enough of my patience chipped away at. I've had enough of people stabbing me in the back. I've had enough of people telling me what they think it is, even though they weren't there. I've had enough of all of that. So there's a part of me that is kind of thankful that they stay away from me. But at the same time, I don't want to be monitored for the rest of my life. I just wish they'd either go away or ask me face to face rather than all this kind of behind the scenes kind of BS and all these little backstabbings and political agendas getting in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to pick somebody that hasn't yet testified publicly, besides yourself, who would you pick if you can name any names?
I can't name their names, but there are a couple of other whistleblowers that I know that I would love to be there with, as well as some of the people that we do know. I would love to just get in there and really, I don't know, I'd like to give testimony, but I'd also like to have probably Fravor back in there. I think he was really good. I wish that David Grush could get back in there and tell everybody what he knows. I know he knows a lot more than what he's even telling in the public domain, but there's a good reason for that. Yeah, I've got about 4 people that I think I'd pick for that. And some of the other people I met with regard to retrievals. But perhaps just doing a roundtable with all the topics we've been talking about here, Tridactyl Mummies, the folks that are in the intel community, some of those people would be good to see, and the ones that can speak really well of some of the imagery, rather than just talking to like the UAP director about it. I think the public needs to hear some of the problems in the exacting detail that these guys have to go through to determine, whether something is an unknown or something that is a balloon. People like that need to be up there because they need to know why the reporting is the way it is, and we can do those kinds of things. So those are the kind of people I wish would come up forward. But yeah, I in all those different topics, I have people, but I would not want to mention their names because they do have clearances and lives that I don't want to compromise.
Absolutely. I can respect the heck out of that. I mean, it's your primary duty as an American citizen is to ensure that your fellow citizens aren't subject to undue stress, undue hardships,
Yep.
especially since you yourself have been thrown through that.
Yeah.
So I just want to say I appreciate your candor with being respectful to those people, and
Yep.
I hope that others can show the same level of respect going forward.
Well, we shall see. I've seen enough. Let me say that. There are some very good people I've met, but yeah, there's some that I'd rather leave behind at this point. But I am still fully in support of disclosure, and I do know that working with the government, nothing goes fast, as they say on Capitol Hill. So I know they've got a big job to do. Unfortunately, at this point, I'd say that I'm also seeing that people that have been leading the effort have had to make compromises over the years, and I think it's making things more difficult because of the agreements that get made over time, and it's kind of a shame. Maybe there's time for new blood now, because some of the people that have been in it for years now are kind of not compromised, but it kind of looks that way to the public. But just that they've had to, water down this and water down that about their effort, and now they're kind of ineffectual. They're becoming more and more ineffective. It's really it's a tough thing to say, but yeah, that's kind of happened. I've seen that to some really good people that I know, and that's something we're going to have to tackle. We're either going to have to get these chains, these people unchained, somehow, or we're going to need some new blood, I think is what's going to have to happen with the disclosure in the government. Because it's going to take more than, because Luna's going to be gone after a while, all these people could, if this takes longer than 5 years, a lot of this landscape can change in just one new administration. And one person, even taking the presidency, it can change the entire landscape of disclosure. So these are the kind of things that, we're going to have to tackle. But yeah, I can see where we're going to have to really think long and hard as to who really understands this stuff. Are they talking to the right people? Are they being transparent enough, or are they glory hogs? People that just love the limelight kind of thing. And then decide for ourselves who needs to be the real head of some of these committees and some of the disclosure people that come out of the military and the intel communities. I think those are the kind of things we really need to get better at. It seems like a lot of times we get thrown people, and good, bad, or indifferent. It's mostly been a very mixed bag. It's not really gotten us any further down the trust pole. So
Yeah.
all those things need to be thought about as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the last thing I want to touch base with you on is this I think it's called 3L Atlas, this interstellar object that was detected recently entering the solar system.
Yep.
So from what I understand, it's entering the solar system on a flat plane trajectory, and it's aligned perfectly to use, I think it's Jupiter as a gravitational slingshot, essentially, before making a close approach from the backside of the sun in like December. Um,
Yes.
People like Avi Loeb from the Galileo Project are postulating that this may be some sort of interstellar craft rather than just something like a comet or an asteroid or something. And I believe it's estimated to be 7 or 8 miles across.
Yeah, 7 miles across. Yep.
Which, I mean, something the size of Mount Everest coming in at 180,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a little weird. Do you have any insight from your experience on if, on the classified level, whether you can say it or not, if something like this has occurred before?
I believe they have been here before. Yes. I can also back that up with mission time as well in the program. That yes, that's a fact that they mentioned. There is a periodic cadence that they have coming back. That being every 50 to 70 years, there's a visitation. This Atlas object, I don't think is part of that. I agree that the things that Avi Loeb has mentioned are very unique in this particular object. Whether or not that proves that it's a comet or not, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, so I can't determine that. I do find the tracks and the plane of our solar system being, quite unique. But we've had other objects that have done the same thing. And Jupiter or some other planet's gravity has changed its trajectories and things like this. It happens. It does happen. So I'm on the fence as to whether or not this is extraterrestrial craft or not. I do agree, though, that this is probably one of the most unique objects we've seen thus far. Now, the part of the narrative I don't agree with, if it is a alien or interstellar craft, is that it's a threat of some kind. No, that's not what I heard when I was in the legacy program. What I heard was that if there is any visitation that is a threat, it would be a threat only to the program folks that are in possession of what, in essence, the NHI would consider either stolen technology and prisoners, false imprisonment of their people. And there's only a few people to blame for that inside the program. And I think those are the people that need to take to heart that their lives are in jeopardy, because that's what I heard. That is what I reported on, and my team reported on. That's the people that really need to be thinking very hard about what their stance on all of this is, because if this craft is that those people coming to seek justice, which is what I had heard on mission, then yeah, the program folks are going to be in trouble. At least the ones responsible for the false imprisonment and the stealing of the equipment or material and exotic materials and so on. So I am in total disagreement with anybody who claims that this is some kind of a world threat at all. That's never been the case. Even when I was in the program, that was not the case back in the 90s. The only thing that's gotten worse in the program from my discussions with other whistleblowers is that the people in the program have gotten more reprobate when it comes to fraud, waste, and abuse of what they have in their possession. So the threat never increased from the NHI standpoint. It only increased from inside the program by humans. So I am in total opposition to anyone that states that this object, if it is extraterrestrial, is a threat to all of mankind. I think that's the biggest lie that I could think of.
Yeah, that's I tend to be in the same park as you on that. I think if it truly were a threat, it would be a much larger percentage of the population, saying that it is. Especially from the current administration. They tend to be very bad on messaging, always saying the worst case scenario first rather than kind of tempering expectations.
Well, if you think about it, it garners them a degree of getting resources much more quickly if they can frame it as a threat. So it may be a false threat and maybe a very bad decision on their part to make it a threat, just simply because they want to break down walls quicker by calling it a threat. But at the same time, it sets a precedence on their narrative that, the NHI are bad people, just like we see in the movies, and that they're all out to kill us and eat us or drink our blood. I think that is something I would not have ever decided on. I think that's a very poor decision on their part if that's the case. But everybody can think for themselves as to, well, if it's not a threat and they're saying it is a threat, why would they want to paint it that way? You can come up with your own conclusions. It does offer them some other leverages to do so, honestly.
Yeah.
So and maybe that's why some of them are starting to say that I'm against it. I don't think it's a good decision.
Yeah, I think calling anything a threat that is obviously not a threat is just detrimental to national security. It weakens our position on the world stage.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it another way, if they couch it as a threat and disclosure happens no matter what, if they could come up with, it's all been a threat and we told you so, then maybe they could feel a little bit more justified for some of their, maybe even killing Americans. Well, we all did it in the name of national security, kind of a thing. So those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. That they can get, plausible deniability. Like, oh, it was all a threat. We always knew it was a threat, and they were all going to kill us anyway, so we did what we thought was best. So therefore, I murdered somebody, and it's okay, though, because I did it for that good reason. I think that may be another reason, which I think is a tough one to sell.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's all I can think of to ask at this point. But I just wanted to say, Jason, thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope the best for you in the future, and want you to continue kicking butt out there, continue with all of the things that you're doing. Its impact will be felt for generations, whether you know it now or not.
Yeah, thank you for saying so. That means a lot. And I will. I'll stay in the fight as long as I can help out. I think I'll continue to do that. It's just it was my decision years ago, and I stick by it. That I've always been trying to help, and regardless of what you think about what I've seen and what I've done, you know that about me, and I'll continue doing that. I'll step up and try to at least help. So you can rely on me. I'm not going to go anywhere.
And I really appreciate that. And once again, Jason, thanks for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Summer 91, Nevada's quiet dust. Jason Sands driving slow in the military hush. Convoy whispers secrets under endless stars. Area 51 dreams hiding who we are. Sun dips low, shadows melt away. A figure appears in the twilight gray. Not like us, skin a gentle blue. Eyes like galaxies pulling me through. Oh, blue wander in the sandy haze, waving down the ride in the desert maze. Need a piece to mend your starlit flight in the Nevada glow through the lo-fi night. What worlds you carry, what lights you've chased. Blue mystery in this quiet space. He stops the wheels, voice soft as rain. Spare part from my ship, ease the cosmic pain. Jason's heart beats slow in the chill air. No ears, just blue calm beyond compare. Crashed in the dune, saucer waiting still. Convoy holds its breath, time stands chill. Blue beam smiles, then fades to dust, leaving echoes in the twilight trust. Oh, blue wander in the sandy haze, waving down the ride in the desert maze. Need a piece to mend your starlit flight in the Nevada glow through the lo-fi night. What worlds you carry, what lights you've chased. Blue mystery in this quiet space. Desert keeps the silence, winds erase the trail. Jason's tale lingers in the soft unveil. Blue kin from the stars, seeking just a mend, where realities blend and the questions never end. 91's whisper in the sand so deep, a lo-fi memory that we forever keep. Oh, blue wander in the sandy haze. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, blue wander in the sandy haze. Oh, oh, oh. And the Nevada glow